drink your water before you eat. Make sure you turn off that TV and just enjoy the food. Enjoy the food that God gave us. And maybe our immunity, but maybe my tummy will go down. And I'm going to start changing when I drink my water.
Water. Same here. I'm going to make all those.
Okay, Scott, do you know who this guy? This is Rex. This is a good friend of mine from Texas. Hello, Rex.
Rex. Hey, how you doing, Kimberly?
Namaste. Welcome to the family.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ankit, Rakesh. It was lovely talk.
Thank you.
Dr. Tulla,
I'll also take a leave, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, my beautiful doctors, Tulla and Saggu. Thank you. Wow, what a talk today.
Very good one.
Empowered. I feel healthy empowered. I just don't know how else to say this, but Rex is a cyber security and privacy expert out of Texas. That's how we met, is through law enforcement conferences, where Rex speaks, I speak, on different levels. Rex is he takes things to a different level the way I used to. He fights for our rights. Like, he gets out there and he literally writes to our senators and lawmakers and say, hey, what are you doing? Why are you letting these guys get away with this? And of course, they don't like to hear it because those guys fund the pockets of the lawmakers, right? But what he's doing isn't just for the U.S. It's truly for everyone in the world.
Yes.
But what we've learned is as bad as this virus is to what we're dealing with COVID, can be as bad as some of the cyber viruses to us on humanity. Warren Buffett spoke on that many times, that the cyber viruses and cyber hackers are more dangerous to us humanity-wise than even nuclear war. And the reason is all the money, economic-wise, all the money. But a lot of people don't know this, but the hackers have been attacking all the hospitals since COVID. Yeah, they have no feelings. Hackers have
so tragic.
Like when 9/11 happened, I posted this in one of my timeline things, but when 9/11 happened, crime dropped. Like, nobody was out stealing from each other in New York. Everybody just had this and sympathy. Even the criminals, they weren't going out robbing the stores or anything. Yeah, we had this weird sympathy going on. And, COVID hits and hackers are like bringing down law enforcement facilities. They're bringing down, because this is their moment in time to take things hostage. And so Rex, share a little bit about what you do with our IBM TV family and where you're from. And because you've been with us and then you had to go leave and get a real job, and now you're back thanks to COVID. How are you doing?
So actually, I'm doing good. I'm a privacy and cybersecurity advisor. I'm a tech and telecom industry analyst for Black Ops Partners out of Washington, D.C., which is a cybersecurity firm that works with the mainly Fortune 500 to Fortune 1000 companies on cybersecurity strategy at the executive level, the senior executive level, which is the C-suite, and the board level. My background is in telecommunications. I've been in the industry for over 35 years. I'm a former senior executive for an LTE service provider, and I've helped several application and platform companies launch that were enterprise application and platform development companies that we developed apps and platforms for cellular phones and smartphones. Dating back to the early 2000s, many of our platforms were adopted by companies like Metro PCS, Cricket, Verizon, and so forth. Metro PCS is owned by T-Mobile now, and Cricket's owned by AT&T, and so forth. One of the apps and platforms that we developed was a application called Houdini Soft, and it enabled a hosting carrier like Cricket to unlock and reprovision a non-native phone to their network, meaning a consumer could take their Verizon phone into a Cricket store, and then they would plug a cable into the device, and it would unlock it and reprovision it on the Cricket network from the Verizon network, basically the street terminology for this is jailbreaking and flashing, but on steroids. So we never sold the application to the consumer, but we built the platforms for the carriers to do this, and it's the antithesis of cybersecurity, and that's how I got into telecommunications cybersecurity. Was the development of this platform. We wrote an algorithm that would unlock over 600 makes and models of smartphones, cellular phones, no matter what the locks were, whether they were the manufacturer locks or the locks that the user would enable on the devices. We could unlock those devices because we were coming in at the firmware level or the bin level. And I can't explain how we did that because I can't expose the IP on how we did that, but there wasn't a device that we could unlock.
So forensics on steroids as well, dealing in hacker world and dealing with all the things.
Yep.
It's definitely forensics of all matters, but forensics of data is pretty much what all of this entails.
Mm-hmm.
But no, you've
right.
been this as long as I have. You've been in the industry, and it changes every day, doesn't it, Rex?
Yep. Yeah, it sure does. And what I learned at Houdini Soft is applicable to anybody who uses any connected device, whether it's a smartphone, a tablet PC, or a PC that's supported by the Android OS, Apple iOS, and Microsoft Windows OS. Through my research on smartphones, I was able to understand the vulnerabilities within the devices and how hackers can get into the devices. Even intrusive application and platform companies like from China and Russia, companies like ByteDance, which are the makers of TikTok, and Baidu, which makes apps in DU browser, as well as WeChat, which is developed by Tencent, and even domestic tech companies like Amazon and Facebook develop apps and platforms that are intrusive to the user, meaning that they're going to surveil and data mine their product users. And there's a lot of cybersecurity threats involved in that, not so much at the consumer level where people are shopping and buying things, but at the corporate level when somebody brings in a device to a company that's supported by one of these platforms, whether it's Amazon, TikTok, or Facebook. You're enabling these companies to collect your personal and professional information, which includes your corporate information as well. So there's security risk there. Also, these nation state hackers from really bad acting countries have also learned that they can launch DDoS attacks and man-in-the-middle attacks through the apps on the phones, making the phone they can weaponize your phone regarding an app that you may have downloaded through Google Play, the Apple App Store, or the Microsoft App Store, and that app can then launch a DDoS attack or a man-in-the-middle attack. And this happened in Saudi Arabia in 2018. The hackers got in through the Microsoft Windows OS and were able to launch an attack on the industrial control systems of Saudi oil refineries, trying to shut systems down to actually cause an explosion, but they caught it. And they didn't understand where that hack came from because they had a secure network and not realize that the hack actually came through the OS on the device, which can also happen through an app. And that's a vulnerability that people haven't been looking at as well.
No, and that's something that a lot of people don't know or understand, and they don't understand how this can impact them on a commercial used individual basis. But these are things that have to go on in the background that you guys don't know that happen. Mm-hmm. Ankit might. Ankit actually knows the
Oh, I'm sorry. She froze.
Yeah.
So Rex, so we were discussing about cybersecurity, and it's a difficult period during the pandemic, COVID-19, and we have seen a lot of attacks going around the world, and especially in US and UK. And there was a news as well that I won't say a name, but there is one country who is trying to create a mess and trying to take the vaccine research for their own use.
Oh yes, I heard about
going around, and that happens in India and in other parts of the world. And in India also, there's a lot of fake news going on using those cybersecurity spams, using the keyword COVID-19. So what do you have to say on that?
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting because, and this is relevant to what's going on today, but last year, MD Anderson, most people don't realize that most cyber attacks, literally about 5% of the really bad ones actually are non-native, meaning that the attacks come from the outside. A lot of people don't realize that most attacks are actually insider threats from employees and people who are in the supply chain. And this happened to MD Anderson last year. 3 scientists had walked out of there with data that ended up in the hands of the Chinese government. And that was research worth billions of dollars gone overnight. And the 3 scientists were caught and they were let go. But this often happens from the inside more so than the outside with low. Well, you can be very low tech and still get this information. You don't have to come in and always hack the network to get to it. And that's happening today with COVID. There was a news report about an executive who was compromised for a company, I think in France, that was developing a vaccine, and he was compromised by Chinese operatives. And so these companies are they're being targeted in a big way, and mostly the targets include employees who are working on the applications, as well as executives and board members. And that's what we do at Black Ops, is we educate people on what these threats are and how these insider threats come in. A lot of them are coming through universities too. Unfortunately, there's a lot of students that come to the U.S. and they study, but they're actually operatives for foreign governments. And it's not necessarily all China. I just don't want to pick on China. It's coming from all over the world. A lot of people would be surprised to know that a lot of IP is also being taken by people from that come from India, even Europe and other countries. Everybody wants this IP, so this IP is valuable. So it's not necessarily that the threats are only centered within adversarial countries like Russia and China. It's really a threat that can come from anywhere and from anybody, even the common criminal. Even the employee could sell the information to an organized crime family that can monetize that information. So it's not necessarily just from adversarial countries either. It's you're exposed to just about anybody who works for your company or your organization.
I heard about Angela Merkel's something getting spied upon and from the US also. So I think it's jungle
exactly.
out there. It's a jungle out there. Everybody catch can sort of. Yeah, you can't trust anybody.
Right. So I wrote. What's interesting is I wrote an article on hybrid warfare for the Vision Times out of Australia, and then it's a 2-series articles. I don't know if you all know this, but I'm also a tech journalist. And I'm a freelance tech journalist, and I write articles for publications like Mission Critical Communications Magazine in the United States, as well as the Epic Times out of New York City and the Vision Times in Australia. I wrote articles for Kimberly's company, Money Masters. And I write them from a tech industry insider's perspective, from somebody who actually started an application and platform company, who knows these vulnerabilities all the way down to at the firmware level. And so recently, based on some work that we do at Black Ops Partners, I wrote 2 articles on hybrid warfare. One article was based on being prepared for hybrid warfare, and what that means are cybersecurity, privacy, and civil liberty threats that are associated with unconventional warfare. A lot of people don't know what that means, but today the modern battlefield is everywhere. Superpowers like China, Russia, and other countries are not fighting mechanized wars against each other. They're fighting war against each other through proxies like Iran, North Korea, Syria, Europe, and all these proxy nations that get involved in these skirmishes all over the world, as well as hybrid warfare can be fought at the corporate level through corporations and going after markets and that sort of thing. And those cybersecurity threats that I talked about often are associated with hybrid warfare as well.
And then you have companies like Facebook selling data to Cambridge Analytica and stuff like that. So it's
so it's interesting. I was an advisor. It's interesting you brought that up. I was an advisor for the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2018. I worked with Senate staffers on questions to ask Mark Zuckerberg in regards to the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal. And a lot of people don't realize this, but it wasn't Facebook that sold it directly to Cambridge Analytica. There was an app developer who developed an app that was sold into the Facebook ecosystem. So this app developer who had developed the app basically designed an app that would collect people's personal information through the Facebook ecosystem. So the app was asking things like, what's your favorite movies? And it looked very harmless and innocent. And over 80 million U.S. citizens who were Facebook users had used that app, plus hundreds of millions of other people around the world use this app. And the app was designed that once the person activated the app, they agreed to the terms and conditions. The app could then lift information off of their PCs, such as their contacts, their location information, and all this other information, plus surveil the user and collect all this personal information through the app. Well, that information was then collected by, I think the app developer is Alexa Kogan, collected that information, and then he packages it and sells it to companies like Cambridge Analytica. Well, we only heard about that because Cambridge Analytica utilized the app within conjunction with the Trump campaign for a presidential election. So what Cambridge Analytica did was just buy this information, and then what they wanted to do was send advertising to those 80 million Facebook users to manipulate them to vote for a presidential candidate. And what they did then was really awful stuff, because companies like Cambridge Analytica will take the information, they'll apply artificial intelligence to the information and find out what the Facebook users' personal preferences are. And then they'll develop micro-targeted ads based on their preferences that uses uses predictive analytics and suggestive technology, which is the 21st century's version of subliminal advertising. And then they blast political ads out to those people based on their personal preferences rather than a generic ad, trying to manipulate these people to vote for a presidential candidate. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what makes it. All this is tied to surveillance and data mining business practices rooted in surveillance capitalism. That all these companies, they're not in the Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, and all these companies, TikTok from China and WeChat. All these companies are in the people surveillance and data mining business. They're there to collect your personal and professional information and surveil you, and then package that information up and then go sell it. That's what they do. They don't create software. They don't create products and services that are benign. They're creating those products and services as a vehicle to get access to your personal information, plus the sensors on your devices to conduct surveillance on you, like the sensors on your smartphone, your GPS, your near field communication tags, and the apps attach themselves to those sensors, enabling them to conduct audio, video, and physical surveillance on the user, as well as collect the user's personal and professional information, because that's the business they're in, to collect all that information. And that's how and then they package it and sell it. And then who they're selling it to? They're selling it to companies like Cambridge Analytica.
And Rex, if we can say that, so there are free virtual, gadgets for these kind of companies who have those free gadgets across the globe, and people are using it, and that's how they're collecting the user behavior information, and then they use it according to their requirements and usage, maybe for political use or for somewhere else, whatever they want. I would like
Yes.
a quick
Yeah.
from you before we switch to the next show. What do you? I mean, where do you rate
Okay.
dark web in these cyber crimes? I mean, what's the role of a dark web in the cyber crime?
Well, you know, getting back to insider attacks and some of the things that we were talking about earlier, the how information ends up on the dark web is it's going to end up on the dark web through somebody who's has access to that information, and they're usually selling it to a criminal organization that's associated with the dark web. That's you're going to find. You're not really going to find nation state companies and nation state hackers that are a threat to our national security or a threat to a company's IP, pretty much associated with the dark web as much as you're going to find more or less criminal organizations that are associated with the dark web. Nation state hackers are collecting that information and giving it to governments rather than just putting it out there. Now they can utilize the dark web to hurt people if they want to hurt people, but more or less you have to look at hackers and people who are collecting this information in different buckets, and those buckets are nation state sponsored hackers, and then there's criminal hackers, just everyday people who are trying to profit from this. And then there's just some people who are just crazy and they just want to hurt people or blow something up, and they're just they're on the fringe. But mainly there's two buckets of hackers that are a huge threat, and that's your criminal hacker or your nation state hacker that's sponsored by countries. And it doesn't have to be adversarial countries. Like I said, any country can have bad actors. And people need to look at it that way. And I wrote another article called Hybrid Warfare, the Rise of Soft Authoritarianism, based on the fact that governments themselves can conduct, good or bad governments can conduct hybrid warfare, not only against their adversaries, but against their own citizens.
There has been some controversy for some of the apps which are there in the Indian government, the health app. I don't know whether there is any substance to it. I don't think so, but it could be that the app makes the device vulnerable, just like you mentioned. Do you have a blog, Rex, or some place where we can keep keep track of your advice?
Yeah, I actually the articles that I've written for the Epic Times, Mission Critical Communications Magazine, and Money Masters, and the Wireless Messaging News, they're published on my website called My Smart Privacy, and that's www.mysmartprivacy.com. And I have two new articles that are I like to put my unedited articles up ahead of publication, but I have two articles that are going to be published by the Vision Times in Australia based on hybrid warfare, and they're up on the article. They're up on the website. Also, I'm going to be launching Cyber Talk USA, and I'm going to be bringing these subject matters up. Cyber Talk USA is going to be a podcast that's really only 15 to 30 minutes of time, and I'm going to be focusing on each one of these individual subject matters because there's so many. And like you all were talking about earlier about focusing on one thing, it's so overwhelming to talk about it all globally. You really have to narrow this down to one subject matter at a time, focus on that, get information out there, make people aware of what these vulnerabilities are, and so forth. So each of my articles are designed that way to focus on different subject matters and so forth. So if you go on my website, www.mysmartprivacy.com, you can then pull my articles up and look at a lot of the stuff that we talked about from a 10,000-foot level today. There's a lot of granular information on my website.
So I'm going to say something in Rex's benefit here. Very few people in this industry I will trust, okay? And I trust Rex 100%. I've been, again, in this industry as long as Rex has been, 35 plus years. And it's rare to find somebody who goes to the lengths that he does. He should be given a PhD in cybersecurity because PhDs in this kind of area does not exist. All right. We just started the university labs for cybersecurity, but it's not something that you can just teach. It's something that you had to learn and be a part of as the industry grew to understand where all the open pieces were and all the undone pieces were, and to also understand the laws. Rex understands the laws as much as I do because we both worked under regulatory laws. We know what the laws are supposed to be, and half of the world doesn't follow them. Why? Because they got.
And not only, well, unfortunately. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no, what I was going to say it's not the fact that some laws aren't. The big issue is there are laws that protect us from surveillance and data mining business practices. Those laws are not being enforced. We have laws that protect us, at least in the USA. I can speak from my research here. The FTC and state AGs, or the Federal Trade Commission, that's responsible for regulating consumer laws centered on privacy and predatory business practices, as well as state attorney generals that regulate laws at the state level that protect consumers. Those agencies aren't even enforcing their own existing laws. And I'll give you an example. In the U.S., you have children that are 13 and under or 12 and under that aren't supposed to be surveilled and data mined by these companies using tablet PCs and smartphones with surveillance and data mining technology on there, violating child COPA protection laws that are governed by the FTC, but the FTC isn't even enforcing that. And they're not even enforcing antitrust laws that are associated with all this data collection and so forth. So that's a whole nother matter that we can get into, but it's a much bigger matter. I also wrote about antitrust. I wrote about antitrust as well and unfair business practices associated with these data collection surveillance and data collection business practices employed by Google, Apple, Microsoft, and all these tech giants.
And we're going to, hopefully Rex is going to be engaging in doing a special for IBM TV where you can hear more each of the because this is constant. This isn't just a one-time storyline. This is a
constantly evolving
growth. And it takes a lot of work with what Rex does, but we want to get his information out there, not just for the U.S. This is for the world. Everything we talk about, because everything is mobile. So everything is mobile. 5G launched. There was a lot of fear in 5G. We're going to have Rex explain all this in another show because we got Dr. Yu. Rex, meet Dr. Yu. Meet Rex.
Hey, Dr. Yu. How you doing?
You would love this. Dr. Yu owns YouTube.com.
DrYouTube.com.
Yeah, DrYouTube.com.
It's gonna be banned. It's gonna be banned soon because I talk about taboo stuff like, Google. They don't talk much about. They're starting to ban Google AdWords like natural therapy or stem cells or biohacking, and